last year, my assessment was that, well, I was not concerned about the economic environment. I thought that markets would give the benefit of doubt to candidates. And that happened, indeed. The volatility that we saw in the markets were much more related to the external environment rather than domestic issues. On the contrary, when we saw Bolsonaro gaining momentum, I mean in terms of voting intentions, we saw markets not only giving the benefit of doubt, but celebrating. When we take some asset prices in Brazil, like equity and exchange rate, clearly they are outperformed compared to peer countries. So markets are somehow already anticipating reforms. Back then what I said, well, I'm not worried about 2018, I'm worried about 2019 because it's the moment that you need to deliver reforms, and Brazil is a difficult country, it's a complex country. We saw President Temer, he did a great administration, but unfortunately he failed in terms of approving a pension reform because there was lots of opposition to that, especially in the elite of the public service. So Brazil is a very difficult country. We're not, it's not a coincidence that it's a poor country. So we do have lots of challenges, and we do have difficulties to challenge interest groups and all these problems. Well, I have a more conservative view about this administration. I'm not saying that's not going to work. I just have some doubts, and I'd like to share with you my thoughts. So first, in my opinion, this election was the most important in the viewpoint of the economic policy. I think it is the most important elections in our history. Why is that? Because we have an awful combination of the most serious fiscal crisis that Brazil is facing, and different from the past, there is no room for increasing tax burden. Society does not accept. So this time we need to cut spending, meaning that you need to challenge interest groups. More than 90% of the budget, the federal budget, is compromised with mandatory spending, meaning that you need constitutional reforms. Aside of that, we have the end of the demographic bonus. Brazil is getting old. It's getting older and really fast. And as it was not enough, the productivity is stagnant since the 80s. Indeed, I think the legacy of Temer is significant, is really positive, but there is a flip side in my opinion, because we have a demanding society. Society, of course, we see this improvement in confidence, we see very low inflation, we see unemployment slowly recovering, and society does not have an idea that to keep this environment, Brazil needs a pension reform, and a good one. If you have a watered-down reform, we're going to have lots of problems, especially in subnational governments. We have the states in Brazil are broken, and this is a structural problem because they compromise big portion of their revenue with payroll and pensions. So it's not, a tiny reform. We're going to have lots of problems to comply with the spending cap and also to deal with this crisis in the state governments. And what I'm saying is that society sees, well, inflation is fine. Why do we need reform? So for the society, it's difficult to understand that sacrifice is needed. Society expects growth acceleration, and we don't have the elements for that, not now. The effort that Brazil needs to do to grow in line with the world is bigger now. Demographics is not going to help, different from the past. I'd like to hear from Fabio about that, but my estimate of growth potential in Brazil is below 2%. So to grow 3.5 in line with the world, Brazil needs lots of reforms. During campaign, I saw a reformist finance minister, but I didn't see a reformist president. The focus of the campaign, unfortunately, was only security, corruption, and moral values. The emphasis on economic policy was not there. So Paulo Guedes, I am pretty much convinced that he is reformist and he knows how to do his job. But I don't know about the convictions of the president. I know that he understands that he needs reforms, but I don't know how much. It's a question mark here. So I'd like to see stronger signals from him that he's really compromised with reforms. I'd like to see the president using the Twitter to say that pension reform is needed. Well, there are implications about that. So I think that today my scenario, although I cannot assign very high probability to that, I don't have full conviction of that, but I fear that we're going to have still low growth in Brazil. I still don't see elements for stating that Brazil can grow in line with the world. I think Brazil will continue to underperform, on a sustainable basis. There are, of course, tail risks. A scenario of a disaster that nothing happens, this is really unlikely. I think a negative tail risk, I think it is really unlikely. A repeat of something like we saw during Dilma's administration is really unlikely. I think we have now a much more mature economic debate in Brazil, and this is also a legacy from Temer, because he put this agenda of structural reforms on the table. He put that in the public debate. It's not about economists discussing reforms, we're talking about politicians discussing reforms, and this is a legacy from Temer. We have also a pragmatic president. I don't think that Bolsonaro is stubborn like Dilma was. He's pragmatic, he's a politician, and I think this is good news. There is a possibility, of course, of a good tail risk, that they do a very good job in this first year of mandate. The first year is critical because it's when president has big political capital, has this grace period in Congress. If they do something good, has been signaled by the finance minister, think that the political capital of Bolsonaro would increase, and we could have also reforms, also other reforms, like tax reform, which I believe is urgent to implement a VAT. But so far, I don't see these elements. So far, I don't see. Of course, I do see the approval of a pension reform, but I cannot see, I do not see signals of something really ambitious. I'm afraid that we will not see big changes for the state level. Well, it's a question mark here, I don't know. I fear that the negotiations in Congress will be difficult, but I think Chris Garman has more capacity to discuss that. So there is a possibility of a very good scenario in Brazil. There is indeed. Brazil has many obstacles to grow, and judging by our history, every time we remove these obstacles, we really get surprised with the capacity of reaction of the economy. But I'm waiting for more signals for that. So it's not a negative scenario, not really a negative scenario, but I think it's going to be still. We're going to still have some volatility in Brazil underperforming global economy. That's it.